I fell in love with Dungeons & Dragons in 2018. One of my closest friends was invited to a session and I was his tag along. He did end up bailing, and despite myself, I still went along and ended up making a bunch of friends that still played to this day. When I saw Hammerwatch 2 was coming out on Nintendo Switch, I was so excited about it. What's not to get excited about? A top-down, old-school D&D inspired adventure where people can create their own adventures with 4-player co-op. What's it like? Grab your sword, shield, and staff as we review Hammerwatch 2 for the Nintendo Switch. Before we begin, can I ask a favor? Can you just like and subscribe? It really helps smaller creators like me get seen on YouTube. I appreciate your time. Hammerwatch 2 is a top-down dungeon crawler set in an open world, departing from the more linear structure of its predecessor. It works much like a twin-stick shooter, but with spells. The left stick moves your character, and the right stick sets your directional aim. On paper, this sounds like an incredible concept, as you play as a hero from the first Hammerwatch game, escaping the castle after defeating the boss dragon. The second you leave the castle, no one cares that you saved the world, and you're tasked with menial jobs like clearing bugs from cellars, gathering herbs for potions, or collecting wolf pelts. Even when returning to your base of operations to report your successful mission, people don't care about that either. It really dampens your investment in the world by dismissing such a huge part of the story. Combat is challenging and can be fun when you find the right class for you, which boils down to a trial and error. There are 5 classes in total, ranging from wizards, rogues, paladins, rangers, and warlocks, all bringing something different to the table. The good news is the game is deceptively large, and you can spend 3 to 4 hours just in the starting area trying to complete everything. But it also falls upon its own sword, with convoluted dungeons, boring side quests, and a general lack of direction for the player. The game doesn't do much to invest you in its world, and I forced myself to play the game for the purpose of this review. On one quest, I had to repeatedly go back to a cave on the starter island, desperately trying to find some signs to mark because the quest giver couldn't be bothered to complete the quest. But the constant backtracking and frustratingly hiding one of the objectives over 2 to 3 caves that you have to discover in the overworld, and one that's only roughly 5 pixels on screen, only further dampened my enthusiasm to dive further into this game. About 3 saves and 15 hours later, I simply gave up. And I kept asking myself, am I missing something? There's no way to adjust the difficulty once you start the game, meaning experimentation and finding your class means restarting the game from the very beginning. I started my first save as a spellcaster on normal difficulty, and I found myself constantly dying in combat. I then started a rogue on easy and hit a similar difficulty wall on the first pirate boss. And then I restarted my save yet again, doing my best to learn from my mistakes, and I still hit a wall further on once you get into the open world. You can use modifiers that help you deal increased damage or have better health regen, but ultimately this didn't save my experience. Dying also incurs a 20% cut of your gold and doesn't replenish the items you used in the previous fight. So if you get stuck on a boss, you either have to spend time scrounging for money to be able to buy better gear and replenish supplies, or just try your luck again and defeat them as you are. It's such a shame, because the boss fights are well thought out and have really interesting mechanics. Graphically, the visuals get in the way of themselves. On one hand, there's this wonderfully rendered old school world to explore, and on the other hand, there's collapsed rocks on paths you can't see, hidden cliffs halting your movement, and mission objectives that are nigh on impossible to see. Your vision is also hampered by aggressive weather effects, blanketing the screen in a purple haze or whiting it out to make navigation almost impossible. The main issue is that all these things are hard to discern, and it ultimately frustrates the player to no end. Some objectives are so hard to differentiate, I had to clear out the enemies in the cave and then use my overlay map to see if I could find them. This is even worse in handheld, and I found myself playing on TV just to be able to get further in the game. I can't even imagine what it would look like for someone who owned a Switch Lite. For my vision impaired heroes, there are some basic contrast options that you can adjust, but I found things so hard to tell apart during my time that I recommend you do your own research to find if Hammerwatch 2 might suit you. The game does feature the option for multiple campaigns, but there's only one available at the moment, and multiplayer is now online only instead of local play. Characters are saved to the host world, so you won't be able to play them in your own worlds. As mentioned before, there are some modifiers you can select when creating a world which may well be expanded on. I did enjoy the card minigame that you can play during your time in Hammerwatch, which focuses on building a castle while trying to destroy your opponents. This was also difficult though, and locked certain mission aspects behind it, meaning that you had to play it until you won, which relied completely on chance. There's a little bit of slowdown, most of it is easily ignored, but what's harder to ignore are the constant loading screens when entering a cave or dungeon consisting of multiple levels. Each time you are greeted with a huge loading prompt on the screen. And despite its faults though, the game is reasonably priced for those who want to try it themselves, sitting around $30 Australian. I tried my best to love Hammerwatch 2, and when that didn't work, I tried my best to just like it. I even spent 5 hours restarting the game to see if another class was what I was missing. Unfortunately, in my case, Hammerwatch 2 was full of frustrations, lacked direction, and just wasn't fun. Just because the game wasn't for me though, it might suit you. Have you played Hammerwatch 2? Let me know your take on it, or even any advice you can give me for when I revisit it. I have seen that the PC version has a lot of amazing mods that fix the core experience of the game, but alas, we don't have that option on Switch. So, what's it like? Hammerwatch 2 is like an 8-bit Diablo crossed with a D&D campaign. I award it a 58 out of 100. With our new review scale, that means it's an okay game, and it might be one for the fans, but perhaps the sum of its parts just don't quite work well, and it's worth picking up on sale. Hey there, thanks for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, I can't thank you enough for your support. Things have moved a lot faster than I expected with What's It Like, and it's becoming my full-time job. Best way to continue supporting me if you liked my content is to keep watching What's It Like. It doesn't cost a cent and it will always be free. But if you would like to help in other ways, you can always buy me a coffee by visiting this link here, or if you would like to join my Patreon, I show behind-the-scenes insights into how a gaming website operates. I'm so grateful to be here making this content, and I'm even more grateful that you're here watching it with me. Thank you so much.